Hey, welcome to Roleplay Cafe. It's Dale here for another live broadcast of RPG A Day 2025. The prompt today being Origin. And with Origin, I would go back to, well, the beginning. Um, to me, and I'm no scholar on this, but to my understanding, and at least my conceptualization of how role playing uh, in its many iterations became what it has become, originated with age old games of war, whether it be like early progenitors of chess, uh, which is basically set for two commanders to out strategize uh, each other. You know, you see this across sports. You see it anywhere. It's that aspect of making your move and countering the other's attempted move, and you know, weighing, measuring, and applying stratagems. Um, this later developed. I mean, like Kriegspiel, which uh, trained officers in what they were doing situations, mock situations for battle. Moving men about on the floor, or some kind of a table or whatnot. Like H.G. Wells, he wrote Little Wars. Him and his friends would do this, and I think that this is like in more of a casual setting to where that they had like their main officers and subordinates, and they could speak with each other about what their turns were. I love playing games like Axis and Allies, and whatnot, where you're working with people. As far as the Axis versus the Allies, and that little aspect there. So that's even an offshoot of that kind of approach to where you have side versus side and multiple people. I think whenever like Gary and Dave, all those guys, basically war gamers. So where wargaming had got to the point. If anybody's ever played like the old Avalon Hill games or uh, the strategic games, um, in the past we're moving the counters around and setting things up, and you got somebody. I mean, those rules, even like Little Wars, had uh, movements for feeding your troops and how much they could shoot, whether you were cavalry or artillery or infantry, and what you would move. So it's kind of akin to like maybe what you might see somebody playing Warhammer, you know, 40K or whatnot. You've got that. I think I had an old HeroScape or something like that, where you're moving around, or Mech Warrior or anything, right? So you have that. Um, but that first branch off of when there was subordinates and uh, major officers, and that kind of folded into, down to me at least, uh, more of a detailed, the chainmail version, to where you go down to a singularity of one player. So you're embodying not only an officer, but just that, for what you're accountable for on a level of, you got to manage your resources individually, whether it's your number of arrows and how many moves you can make singularly, and down to a level where you are in a small little company, and you have, and oftentimes, there would be a leader of the party. Somebody might be the caller, you know what I mean, that's gathering the information. Uh, I think it would behoove them to do that, especially in tournament type situation where they're trying to make a little money, and running you through a gauntlet uh, at at conventions or tournaments. In the early days of progression through different enemies and different approaches, with the enemies having, or creatures having certain effects that you had to work around. I'm sure it was engaging on that level to them, as it is presently. Especially the more crunchier games where you're moving things around minutely. You're weighing and measuring your options and your resources, as far as even movement and time and firing rate, and you know what I mean, to hit probabilities and chance, and then you ascertain what your best options are, and then you apply them and see how they fold out with the dice, or unravel, as the case may be sometimes. Um, so you're engaged that way. I find it interesting, and that, like I said the other day, this how why pretty much, because I was kind of a war gamer myself. Like, it felt natural to translate down to a smaller line, level like that. Like, all of you are working as mercenaries and trying to clear out a dungeon. It kept everybody kind of on rails, because back in those days we played. I mean, you know, I think the highest level I got on anybody was like level 7. So we was usually playing in dungeons and smaller, and we'd go from area to area, but normally with with low level characters. Um, Trying to survive. We didn't getting to no level where it was super heroic, you know. But it definitely had that infantryman type feeling, you know. And until you got even past a certain level of competence, it's almost like back in the day, the parents wouldn't even name their kids sometimes, because I've seen this happen. I had a great uncle who wasn't named by his parents, but was named by his siblings. Doc is what they ended up calling him. They had a lot of kids, and to my mind, it'd be like, well, if they survive at least a certain level, we feel we're in the safe zone to be like to be attached to these. But otherwise, you kind of stay from a distance. Whether you're a parent with a child back then, with the uncertainty of someone's longevity, and even in war, there's a lot of I'm sure, until somebody got to be where they were competent on the battlefield or whatever, like, you may not want to make friends with them, because they could potentially through actions of their own detriment, lead to their demise. So you don't want to do that. So a lot of the guys, you joke, like, and that's why they have the funnel in DCC. You don't know, is any of these characters going to kind of pass muster, as it were, and have a little bit of a longevity about them. So then you get invested and name the characters. Until then, they're just a grunt. They're just a peon. Kind of reminds me of back in the Command and Conquer days with the video games. Until they got so many ranks, you didn't really, they were just fodder, cannon fodder. But yeah, I mean, as far as like the wargaming, distilling it down to single uh, persons, from you on a larger scale doing these games, is maybe commander commanding men and moving things around, to actually being on the battlefield yourself as an individual and as one of the men, in a game like Dungeons and Dragons, where you're clearing a dungeon out or whatnot. That was that. And to me, it led to like various iterations, even more, where when you have that realization that when you're playing a singular character, you can have the luxury of delving into their motivations, that character's motivations and worldviews, and what they think about things and how they would react. So that's a different aspect of play that kind of transcends beyond that. You know what I mean? And even you can go to more of a narrative base and away from the more crunchy tactical maneuvers, to allow you to be more so in the headspace and character as character, and express yourself or the character in those games. It's a different experience. But it all started way back when, and it's just good to be living in the golden age of gaming, tabletop gaming, to where right now we get a myriad of ways to approach play in a vast array of genres and landscapes, or dreamscapes, as it were. And yeah, it's going to be a gamer. Anyway,